Hello, today is Friday, April 15th, 2022. My name is Jonathan Yonker, and I'm interviewing Alex Renteria for the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University of Kingsville. This is part of Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Renteria, that this recorded interview will be placed in the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University of Kingsville and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, especially given that your recording may appear online, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 4 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University Kingsville wishes to archive your interview, along with any other photographs and other documentation at the South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University of Kingsville. We will retain copyrights of the interview and any other materials you donate to South Texas Archives at Texas A&M University Kingsville. Do you give us consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University of Kingsville?
Yes, I do.
Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University of Kingsville copyright over the interview and any materials that you provide?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree to allow South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University of Kingsville to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I do.
Do you grant South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University of Kingsville consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Project, which will include posting this interview on the internet?
Yes, I do.
We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we've already filled out. We will use this information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. The final storing of the pre-interview form will be at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University of Kingsville. We will have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members so that you will not be part of the public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Jernigan Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file? Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the South Texas Archives at the Jernigan Library at Texas A&M University of Kingsville?
Yes, I do.
On occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact their interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news sources. Do you give consent for us to share your phone number or your email with journalists?
Yes.
All right, so we can begin our interview. I'd like to start, if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Alex Renteria. I'm a music major here at Texas A&M University Kingsville. I play the tuba. I'm from a border town in South Texas called Laredo. I have a huge family. I don't know what else to say, but yes, I plan on being a music educator when I graduate.
All right. You said you have a large family. Does your family live with you, or are they local, or do you have family like out of state, maybe even out of country?
Well, I don't live with my family right now. I'm staying in Alice, Texas. They're back home in Laredo. But when I'm not going to school, I do stay with them, and it's several of them. I do have some family out of the country and across the border in Mexico, but we're not really close. So I don't know if I would consider them, you know, close family members. But yeah, I live by myself for the most part.
All right, I understand that. I come from a large and spread out family myself. And what are you currently doing for a living?
Well, at the moment, I am not working because as a music major, since I commute to Kingsville, I have 8 a.m. classes every day, and my last class is usually at 6 o'clock. No, usually ends at 6 o'clock, and my major currently, well, my major requires a lot of practice. So the time I do have um out of school is spent on practice, on homework, and that takes more time than I think it should. So I don't have time to pick up a job. But when we do have extended breaks from school, I I picked up a job at IHOP. I didn't work there too long, but yeah, on extended breaks, I do work, and I try to provide for myself. I don't like depending on my family too much. But yeah,
Okay. Could you tell me a little bit about your experiences with the COVID-19 so far?
um, so the pandemic hit my freshman year. It was my second semester at Tamuk. I had just gotten a job actually. I was trying to juggle classes and a job, so I was already stressed out. When the pandemic started in March, we had just released for spring break, and we were expecting to come back, but then they extended it for a week. And then after that week, they canceled school and it went completely online. And that wasn't great for me because at the time I didn't have a computer, I didn't have a reliable um, way to use the internet. Um, so that was really tough. I ended up having to leave my job that I had recently gotten like 3 or 4 weeks beforehand, and I had to go back home to Laredo. Going back home was a little tough because you know, not being able to. I was just getting used to the college atmosphere, and I had just started making friends. So that was another blow. Um, it affected me in several ways. I couldn't see my friends even though I was back home. And when I did see my friends, it was no more than like 20 minutes because my mom was kind of she was worried about us contracting the disease or the virus. And I understood that, so I didn't really try to like fight her on that, because I knew that she was just looking out for us. But it was very frustrating at times because at the time I had a girlfriend, and the pandemic didn't really help with that either. Oops, sorry, the light flickered. Um, the pandemic didn't help with that either. Uh, it added more unnecessary stress, and the relationship ended up falling apart. Um, it wasn't just the pandemic, but that certainly didn't help. Um, then coming back my second year of college, we had just started marching band, but it was completely different. They gave us the option of doing it virtually, so we would have to be in front of a computer, and I hate being in front of a computer. I really can't stand it. Um, but I ended up doing that because I thought it would be easier to manage. But I'm a very social person. Like in class, I speak a lot. Um, so not being able to see all the people that I usually worked with took a toll on me. Because again, I'm a social person. I like talking. I like making jokes with people. I just like being around people. Um, and so not being able to be around the my classmates and my friends wasn't great. I ended up missing a lot of classes because I lost motivation. I didn't want to be taking classes online. I didn't want to be paying more for classes, even though we weren't using school resources. I lost motivation to practice, even though I used to love it. Um, it affected me in more ways than I think I can count at the moment. But it was very difficult because I also had a few of my friends that uh, got the virus, and thankfully they were okay. But it was a very frightening experience.
Around what time did you first hear about COVID-19?
Um, I actually heard about the virus when I had gone to work, and they were talk my coworkers were talking about they were talking about they were talking about COVID-19. And I didn't know what it was, so I asked, and they were surprised that I didn't know because I'm usually very involved in what's going on, but I was just so busy. So I was at work. I had just gotten there. My manager was telling us that things were gonna have to change. Um, a lot of us weren't happy with that. I had to. Um, it made school harder. It just wasn't a great time for it to. I don't think there's ever a great time for a pandemic to hit, but for me especially, it wasn't a great time. So yeah, I was at work and I found out because of my coworkers.
It'd be a pretty scary world if, pandemic came at a convenient time. When would be a convenient time for that?
No, yeah, of course. That's why I caught myself saying it, and I'm like, yeah, there's never a right time for that.
So, what was your initial reaction to finding out about the pandemic?
I was I'm a very optimistic person, but I know that people don't always look out for each other. Um, I understood that though, because I understand that people have things going on and they don't always want to be worried about what's like. If you have things going on at home, the a virus isn't gonna really deter you from doing what you have to do, unless eventually the government started taking steps to stop the spread. But I I was optimistic that we'd be okay in the end, but I also was unsure how long it was gonna last. And I think I can speak for most of us that it lasted a lot longer than it probably should have, because the not everyone took the pandemic serious, and I wouldn't say I blame them, because there's skeptics for everything, but at some point I think you know you have to take responsibility for not just yourself, but you have to watch out for your loved ones. um yeah, I was optimistic that it wouldn't last long, but very unsure of what was going to transpire.
And you mentioned that a lot of people, didn't take it seriously. At what point did you begin to realize that this was a serious issue?
um when it was a couple weeks after they canceled um in-person class, because when they canceled it, I was like, this should help. The spread shouldn't, it should slow down, but it really didn't. So 2 weeks of being back home, no, the first week of being back home actually, there was a first case in Laredo, And I was like, I know my hometown. I love it back there, but I know that people are really careless. Not just that, I live in a border town, so truckers are always coming in and out. Laredo's the number one land port in the country. So I knew it was inevitable. So like a week after they canceled class and I went home, once the first case hit, I knew that it was gonna spread like wildfire, because that one case was only the one we knew about. You know, it was very likely that more than one person had it, but we only knew of one person. So that's when I started to worry, to be concerned about my family's safety, to be concerned for my own safety, of course. But yeah, about a week after classes were canceled.
And thinking kind of on the opposite of the spectrum, do you think that at any point during all this things have been taken maybe too far, or people have been, too serious or too focused on the pandemic?
That's a tough one, because I believe over 400,000 people have died of the pandemic. So I feel like it'd be insensitive for me to say that people took it too serious. I understand that there's a level of fear to everything, and fear mongering with politicians and stuff like that. But um, I feel like I would be doing people a disservice to say that they took the pandemic too serious, because if it involves people's lives, then I think you should do what you can. And if you're going above and beyond that, I don't think I can blame someone for doing that. So I wouldn't say that some people took it too serious, but we all take steps that we think are necessary. And I think that's important.
And what about things do you feel like maybe should have been done? Do you think that for the general population, at least, enough steps were taken, or do you feel like things should have been pushed even further?
Um, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I lost my train of thought.
Yes, we were discussing that, you didn't feel that people had taken it too seriously given, the stakes. I was asking if you felt like maybe there were people out there in the general population that weren't doing quite enough and you would have wanted them to do
Oh,
more.
yes. Oh, of course I would want everyone to take uh threatening virus seriously. But again, as much as I think everyone should be, taking it serious, we all have things to worry about. I do think some people could have taken it more. Like, I have friends personally that didn't want to wear a mask. They don't want to stay home. And I understand that. But at some point, it's bigger than one individual person. Um, it should be about, as humans, we should just be kind and caring for each other. And that's not always the case. Um, so I think it could have been taken more serious. Not You asked about the general populace, right?
Yeah, it's just, politicians, neighbors, close friends. I was just wondering if you felt like the people weren't doing enough, or if you
Yeah,
felt that they were
especially
doing,
politicians.
what they should be doing.
Yeah, especially politicians. I mean, it was the virus was politicized right away, and I don't think it should have been, because it affects all of us in the end, no matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on, left, right. Me personally, I don't. I believe to be more left leaning, but toward the middle. Um, I, the virus was very politicized by the president, I felt like the former administration could have taken it more serious, because at one point, I remember they were calling it, they were saying it was nothing more than a flu. And that was very worrisome to me, because that a lot of the people that did end up stating that ended up passing away. And, I saw people on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter laughing that people that didn't take it serious were passing away. But I don't think that laughing at someone's death is ever the right reaction. Um, you know, yes, they could have taken it more serious. They did pass away, but at the end of the day, they're still a person. Um, and I don't I think that politicians did the general populace a disservice by making it a left or right issue. It just should have been, take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of the people around you. Um, that's really all you can ask of people. But some didn't even want to do that. It's a tough situation to be in unless you're in it.
I agree with a lot of that. We discussed some of this earlier with um, your family, and you mentioned a previous relationship. But how do
Yeah.
you feel that COVID has affected your family specifically? Do you believe it
Um,
has changed, the way you go about your daily activities?
of course, yeah. I have I have two sisters, a brother. Um, you know, my elderly aunt lives with us back home in Laredo. Um, my mom, my stepdad. Um, my stepdad took it way more serious than all of us. Like I believe we all took it serious, but my stepdad did more so because he's a nurse, and he got firsthand experience in trying to save these people's lives, and he saw people pass away that they didn't need to. Um, I remember in the news there was in our local news station, a 17-year-old passed away, and he saw that, and I think that hit him. Um, it resonated with him just even more because you know at the time I was still a teenager. I was 19. My younger sister was still 17, about to turn 18. No, she was 18 at the time. I'm sorry. Um, then, and I have an older sister that's only a few years older than me. So he wasn't. He still is a nurse, but he didn't want to just wear the N95 mask. He bought an actual gas mask. And at first I made fun of him because I thought it looked ridiculous. But then I had to stop and think about, you know, and I thought it looked uncomfortable. I'm like, how can you wear that for, your shift? He works 12-hour shifts. Um, but if he was able to deal with that level of discomfort for as long as he did, I really respect that, because not everyone was willing to do so. And um I don't think I could have done that either. Like when it comes to my older sister deals with severe anxiety. Like um she she's not a she's not as social as I am, but I think the world being closed off made it even harder for her, because the little time she did get out of the house, she spent with friends that were very near and dear to her. She grew up with them basically, and her not being able to do that, not being able to have an outlet to speak to someone as comfortably as she usually does, because we're siblings, but there's something about friends that you can't get from a sibling. And yeah, we're friends too. We're a very close family, I believe, but we can't do everything for each other. So my sister was greatly affected too. Like I said, our aunt lives with us back home, and she just turned 71, I believe. So we were even more careful if we ever did want to leave the house for, like a get together or something. We had to make sure that everyone at the party was tested, or the get together was tested. Not And they had a negative result. Even then, those get-togethers were no more than 5, 6 people. So we had to limit our interactions with other people, not just the not just the quantity of people that we were around, but the amount of times we were gonna go out and spend time with other people. So it was very complicated. It was a very difficult thing to navigate because everything was new to us. We had to take hand sanitizers, masks everywhere we went. I can't imagine how many masks uh, we went through. We would reuse them a lot because there was a mask shortage. Everyone needed masks, but there was only so many. My younger brother had to stop going to actual school, and I know that was difficult for him because he's not as I wouldn't say he's awkward, because he's not. He's I think it's harder for him to interact with people than it is for me. And going back to school would have been very beneficial for him to learn how to act in certain situations. But I think that we all benefited from being so close knit, from being understanding that it was bigger than us. We knew we didn't want to get our aunt sick. She had health issues. She has diabetes. She One of her toes had been amputated because her circulation wasn't great either. So I think my aunt, I really do believe that my aunt saved our lives, because if she wouldn't have been with us, I don't think we would have taken it as serious as we did. And I think that's the way it affected our family the most. Just having our aunt there with us made everything, it made us understand more.
I remember there was a lot of talk about, that similar situations of, even if you think you're strong enough to resist the COVID-19, don't risk bringing it home to others who can't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it might sound ugly, but I don't really care what happens to me, because I'll be the one to deal with it. But I can't control what happens to the people I love. And that's what I had to go into every day thinking. Like, I can't, not because of me. I don't care what happens to me, because of the people that I care about.
And you mentioned dealing with the mask shortage. I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail on that.
Well, we were lucky because my stepdad, again, he's a nurse, and uh the nurses were given extra masks, extra boxes of masks, so they could take care of themselves better. And my stepdad would he would reuse a lot of them, even though it puts him at greater risk, but he wanted us to be able to have protection from it. So he would give us what he thought he didn't need. So we were lucky in that sense. But for the people that didn't, like, hospitals had shortages, not just in Laredo, but all across the country. I remember at one point Laredo was the biggest hotspot for the virus, because of the port, because people going in and out of the country. Masks weren't readily available until like a year after the pandemic had started, because that's when we started getting masks from all across the country, all across the world, actually. Um, China was mass producing them. We had a bunch of companies that don't really focus on masks trying to, you know, fund the companies that do. Um, I'm just I can't say how lucky we were to be able to be protected.
There were quite a few companies that kind of shifted gears. I believe there was also some like alcohol companies who started producing hand sanitizer.
Yeah, but they smelled gross. I can't stand them.
Did you ever have to use or buy like the homemade masks or sanitizer during the pandemic?
Yes. Homemade masks aren't the greatest, but I mean, because they're well intentioned, and I understand that, but they don't. If you put your shirt over, you can, and you blow through it, you can feel everything. Like, it doesn't stop anything. And for most of the masks that were being made, like at home, they were cotton. And yes, well intentioned, but they're not great. So we did have to buy some. Some people just started making them just because they look nicer, and it gave them some income, so they would sell them. They would make them, sell them, and then at a time where people were losing their jobs, I don't think I can say anything about that, because you know it was a tough time for everyone. So buying hand sanitizer that wasn't great, like it would dry out your hands, it would smell gross, but we were clean. And I think even though they're not as effective as we would like them to be, the effort was there, and I think that's important as well.
Did you or maybe some friends or neighbors perhaps have to get involved in any of that, making your own supplies or trying to maybe barter with somebody who did?
Yes. My cousin, my cousin actually started making masks of her own. Um, she would give them to. She would give us. She wouldn't sell it to us. She would give us masks. And our neighbors in Laredo, our community isn't great. you know, um, there was a lot of hostility with neighbors because even before the pandemic, they would fight over parking spots, property lines, things like that, and it created a lot of hostility even before the pandemic. So when the pandemic started, and people needed things, like, let's say we had masks in abundance. I'm not saying we did, but let's say we did. Um, and our neighbors didn't. Even though we didn't like them, if we had something that we could offer, we would. They wouldn't all the time, because you have to look out for yourself at first. But I think the pandemic brought everyone a tiny bit closer, even though we still weren't on great terms. It gave us a sense of unity, because we weren't going through it alone. Our neighbors were going through it. We were going through it. I remember the corner house on my block started um started growing their own vegetables, and they would make boxes about this big, and she would start giving them, like she would go house to house asking if they needed anything. And I thought that was beautiful because, even though, they weren't on best of terms with everyone, we were still trying to look out for each other. And I think that, humanity finds a way to live, to care for each other. And I think that's beautiful. A sense of community when it wasn't there before. Yeah, our neighbors, they weren't great, but we appreciate them now more.
And speaking of community, were there any organizations or groups that you were a part of during all this that, the pandemic interfered with? I know you'd already mentioned school and band, but was there
Um,
anything else that you were involved in?
um, I was actually a founding member of, or one of the founding members of a string organization at the School of Music. I don't play a string instrument, but they needed members and they needed leadership roles to be filled in. So the pandemic hit, all of our plans got canceled. We were supposed to go to Oklahoma to perform and to have an exhibition, but that had to be canceled as well. So we had been planning this for over a year, and it was like a wrench being thrown into the gears. It messed up what we thought was set in stone. Um, there's a saying that says, I don't remember it verbatim, but the gist of it goes, make a plan and watch God laugh, something along those lines. And I never realized how true it was until, we all of our plans got sidetracked or canceled or postponed for not just a week or a month. It was a year or 2 years even, because we're 2 years separated from it beginning. And we're finally gonna go to Oklahoma. Um, but yeah, things get with the string organization, that was a big wrench thrown in there. And I think that's the only one. Yeah, because I don't attend church too much. So I didn't really have that.
So with those that you have been interacting with, what would you say that has brought you to continue those interactions? What level of necessity do you find that even through the pandemic, you still met with people?
Um, in high school, I'm sorry, hold on. In high school, um, it was difficult for me to make friends because I knew a lot of people knew me, a lot of people liked me, and I liked a lot of people, but I wouldn't consider them friends. But when I graduated, I got closer to the people that I had met, and we got really close, kind of like brothers, and even some of my friends that were girls, they were like sisters to me. They're, when you lose, when you go a while and you're not able to see the people you care about, it's tough, because uh you have a kinship with them, and not being able to see them is it's very difficult. So I had to, they would invite me to their houses. They tell me they got tested. They asked me to get tested, and of course I would. Um, it was more. It wasn't because we really. Yes, of course we wanted to see each other, but we needed to see each other more than we wanted to see each other, because we needed to know that we were all going through it, and I think that made us empathize with each other and get closer even. So I didn't realize that we needed to see each other until after the fact. Until I realized that, I had a friend that lost his mom, and he was really going through a hard time. And, you know, I would never say that seeing friends makes that go away, but it makes the feeling of losing a parent go away. But it helps because you see people you care about, you see that they do care about you as well. And we just really cared about each other.
Yeah, humans are social creatures. We need that. We might not always want it, but we do need it.
Yeah, of course.
Um, has your family had to change or adapt what they take with them for their outings?
Yes. Like I said, we were very conscious of what we didn't want to happen. We were more focused, like we would take hand sanitizer, all kinds really. Like we would take a spray hand sanitizer, the gel hand sanitizer. Uh, we would take um chemicals to like clean our faces. They weren't harsh chemicals, but as humans, we're always touching our face. Subconsciously we don't always notice, but like our ears, our mouth, our nose, our eyes, especially, like we're always touching our face. So we had to make sure that we had masks, we had hand sanitizer, we had things to be clean, things to be uh we just had to be conscious of of what we are doing and ways to counteract uh the virus if we did come in contact with it, like mask, hand sanitizer, extra extra pairs of clothes. If anything ever did happen, we had that on us. We would have a bag in the car ready to go just in case anything happened.
How would you say that the COVID-19 pandemic has altered the way that you've pursued your education?
It it made it um so the first year and a half was very difficult. Well, the first year really, more than anything. uh Not just me, but a lot of my classmates lost motivation. We didn't want to go to class. We didn't want to be. We didn't. We didn't. We stopped caring at some point. Um, all of our classes suffered. The few people that didn't were a rarity. Um, and I commend them because, when people don't, when you see a lot of people not wanting to be at a certain place, it usually does make you not want to be there as well. But for the people that did uh, keep getting amazing grades, I commend them a lot because not everyone was able to do that. Not everyone was able to mentally get to the right places to keep wanting to keep going. Me myself, uh, I failed a couple classes. I had to drop a couple classes because of loss of motivation, not miscommunication with professors, because this was just as new to them as it was for us. And the more I grow, the more I understand that our professors are human as well. Like they're not just some authority figure. They have feelings. They deal with anxiety. They feel just as much as we do. So um a lot of our professors did also lose motivation, and I can't say I blame them, even though they're getting paid. But it it made things hard for all of us. It wasn't it wasn't a great experience. Like I don't think anyone wanted to be online.
That was definitely a change, and it showed some big gaps in technological skills. I know for myself that there was at least one professor that I still to this day do not know what she looks like, but I could probably pick her forehead out of a lineup.
Yeah, like things like that are crazy. That's
Uh,
funny.
what other challenges did you believe that the pandemic brought to pursuing education?
Well, during the summers, I had this regular gig where I would go to middle schools and I would take my tuba. I would be there teaching, helping the band directors. And since I'm pursuing education as well, they sometimes I'd get paid. Not all the time, but because teachers are on a limited budget. I wasn't able to do that with the pandemic. By the time I was able to, it was I was just able to do that over this past winter break. It was a tough place to be in because, you know, since I want to be an educator, I would see my old band directors, they they care so much about it, but the students that were brand new to it really didn't have the same connection as I did or as my peers did because they weren't there physically. They weren't playing music. They were looking at a screen and pretending to play. And I can't blame those students because it's music is one of those things where it's very difficult to teach over a screen. And but it did make it to where some of my old band directors had to change professions because they lost motivation for teaching because they saw that the students really didn't care. And they as well realized that they can't blame the students because no one expected the virus to change the way we live, change the way we do things. um it changed everything. So educators especially had to put their lives at risk, going to schools by the time that Greg Abbott opened the state. I believe it was slightly premature. It was before any other state had opened. um and teachers didn't want to be putting themselves in harm's way. So it did make a lot of teachers not want to be there. It made a lot of teachers quit. And, me pursuing a music education degree, it made me think about if I really wanted to keep pursuing music education. But I chose to stay with it because I knew it would end. By the time I graduate, it should be gone. And if it's not gone, it should be very controlled. Um, and yeah, that's really the only reason that I decided to stay.
During the beginning of the pandemic, when schools did switch over to remote education, there was obviously a large problem with that is not everybody had electronic devices at home, and those that did were not prepared for everybody in the household to be working remote. Multi-family or multi-children homes, you know, two computers, five children, stuff like that caused problems for a lot of people.
Yes.
Did the school that you're with, did they offer any accommodations or assistance for those type of situations?
Uh, Luckily, I went to a big school. Like I was trying to teach at a big school. Um, they did have Chromebooks in excessive amounts. Like they had leftovers that they ended up having to give, not give, but loan out to districts that couldn't afford it. So the students from where I'm from, they were they were in a better place than others were, because it was a huge school. They did have the resources. They lent out Chromebooks, so every student got a Chromebook. Um, I think the school districts in Laredo were very fast acting, that because not they understood that not everyone had internet, not everyone had, laptops or things to do their homework on. So what they did was they set up routers, and put them on buses, and put those buses in places where, Wi-Fi wasn't as accessible, or where they knew underprivileged kids that couldn't afford Wi-Fi lived. So I think the kids of Laredo were luckier than others that couldn't do that, or couldn't get that, or receive the resources that they did. So I'm very grateful for, you know, I think people from where I'm from are always saying how boring it is, how things take forever to get done. But when it comes down to it, I'm really grateful that our city was able to provide all of that for students that were underprivileged, that didn't have all the resources that everyone else did.
And can you speak a little bit about the experiences coming back to school, once everything began to open back up? How was that?
Oh, that was very it was it was very it put a lot of us in dilemmas, because they gave us the option. I don't know if you remember, but they gave us the option to come virtually, or to go attend in person. Like they were opening things back up, but they wanted to give us the option. They don't want to force us right away, at least. Um, a lot of coming back was difficult, because I had brand new roommates and they were freshmen. Um, and I was kind of like a mentor, I guess, but I didn't think that I was qualified for it, because I didn't even get to finish out my first year completely. But they thought that I knew more than I actually did. Um, that was teachers. I know professors that there's still one professor in the music the school of music that is still virtual, even though every other professor is in class. But that's because she had been battling cancer, so she's still out. She should be coming back soon, but it was a difficult transition for everyone, because we had been going, from being on a computer to being back in person. It made things easier, but the transition was what was hard, changing your curriculum to be able to, because at that point it was the second time you changed the curriculum to go online and then to go back in person. Um, and a lot of the professors, they were new, and that was a big problem for them. So coming back wasn't just difficult for me, but for the people I lived with, for professors, but I think in the end it was better that we were able to come back, because I see people now that still wear their masks, and I completely understand why. But they're happy to be on campus. They might still have a lingering fear of what's going on, but I think everyone is happier for it. I think everyone's better for it. I think it's beneficial that we're back on campus.
Mm, I would say a lot of being able to get back onto campus was thanks to the vaccinations.
Oh, yes.
How did you feel about the news of the vaccinations when you first heard about it? Were you skeptical? Were you happy?
Well, you know, I said prior that I'm a very optimistic person, but I do have a healthy, I think we should all have a healthy, we should all be skeptical to a certain extent. Um, I I waited a few months before I got vaccinated. Like the vaccine came out, and I wanted to see if there was any effects before I took it. And that sounds, you know, I don't mean to say that the people that took it were guinea pigs, but they really were. Um, it you know, as with every other disease that requires a vaccination, not every vaccination is foolproof. I wanted to see how effective it was. And I actually didn't get vaccinated until I saw one of my dad's friends who, sorry, who had gotten vaccinated. He still contracted the virus, but he had no symptoms. And even with the flu virus, you can get vaccinated, but you can still get the virus because it's not 100%. And I understood that. Um, but being able to see people that got vaccinated still got the virus, but they didn't have any side effects, they didn't have any symptoms. They were I think that's what helped me choose to get vaccinated. Um, there was people online that were making fun of people that weren't vaccinated, and it made me upset to a certain extent because I understood what they were trying to get at. I think that it is important for us to get vaccinated, but I don't think that, going after someone for choosing what to do, choosing not to take it. I don't think that's making fun of them. I don't think that's beneficial for anyone. Um, at the end of the day, it's still their body. Yes, it might still be spreading, but it's a very difficult situation because vaccinations aren't just, I heard people talking about herd immunity. Uh, yes, herd immunity is a thing, but it takes a herd. It takes people that want to get vaccinated to achieve that. And I just hope everyone takes care of themselves. I never want anyone to get sick.
And can you talk about your experience with getting the vaccination? When or where did you receive yours?
Yeah, I got my, because I've taken it 3 times. I've been boosted. Each time I wanted to kill myself. The vaccine had brought symptoms with it, of course. The first one I did take, I all 3 of them I took in Laredo. But the very first one I think was the one that made me feel the worst. Because I took it in Laredo, but I had to drive back here to Alice. And that same night, um, I remember getting here and not being able to sleep. I was sweating, my head hurt. I had a class the next day, but I couldn't function for like a day after I took the vaccine. It gave me, I got a fever. I thought I had the virus. um, it was, after taking the first one, it made me mad. But not mad because I don't know how to explain it. Um, it made me mad that I'll drop that. I'm sorry. Take it. It's beneficial for everyone to take the vaccine, unless of course you have a an allergy to any of its ingredients. Then of course do what you need to. But me, the first vaccine made me feel terrible. The second vaccine made me feel bad, but not as bad as the first one. And the third vaccine, it wasn't as bad as the second one, but it still gave me symptoms, and I wasn't happy about it. By the time I had to take the third vaccine, I didn't want to. I took it because my mom forced me to. Um, and uh, and you know, I'm grateful she made me, but I was very unhappy um after taking it.
I can relate on that. Thankfully, I didn't receive much of the symptoms or side effects from the vaccine, but I seem to have that reaction every year with the flu vaccine.
Yeah, it's
So
it.
many years, it's like, do I want to get the flu or do I want to get the shot and make sure I get the flu?
Yeah, it's like you're gonna feel something regardless. So if one is shorter term, that's what made me, realize that it's gonna last a lot less than me actually getting the virus. Or like you said, the flu vaccine will make you feel bad for a day or two, but the flu will make you feel bad for a week. So I had to choose which one I wanted to deal with, kind of like you did.
So, segueing vaccines into healthcare, what kind of concerns or questions about healthcare have kind of come to mind due the pandemic?
Um, like when it comes to the United States, we're one of the few. I think we're the only first world country that doesn't have universal health care, and it did sway people's decisions, because if people knew that they couldn't afford a certain thing, like if they couldn't afford to be at the hospital because of all the bills, they just wouldn't go to the hospital. And one of my uncles did refuse to go to the hospital, even though he had very bad symptoms. So um my stepdad had actually, he had been giving him like recommendations. I remember for one of my cousins, we had to take groceries to them, uh and thank God that they were insured, and they could afford it, but not everyone can. And I think that it's important to look out for each other at that point. When someone can't do a certain thing, I think it's important that we try to help when we can. Of course, not everyone can help. So healthcare, not everyone gets the privilege of having it. So the people that do have it should really be grateful, and just realize that not everyone has it, and that does weigh some people's decisions, of course. So it's important to have a level of understanding with every situation that's going on, especially with the virus.
Along with the schools, a lot of the healthcare facilities began working remote. Did you have to have any experiences with that?
No, because I'm a very stubborn person, and when I'm sick, I don't like going to doctors because, you know, um, at the time I was still living alone. Like I live alone right now, but when I get sick, I work. I have a very limited budget, because since I'm not making income while I'm going to school, I got sick a couple of times, and I didn't want to go to the doctor because it required a copay of like $35, and that's $35 that could have gone to gas. Since I commute, that's about as much as it takes to fill up my gas tank. So I had to choose whether I wanted to feel better faster, or whether I wanted to be able to get to school or get to the places I needed to be. So that's one of the ways that it affected me. Like, I had to pick and choose what I wanted to do and what I had to do.
You'd mentioned that you didn't want to go to the doctor. On the bright side, throughout the pandemic, you wouldn't have had to go to the doctor because everything was remote.
Well, yeah, that's right. But they still charge you. So um yeah, you're right.
Let's see. We've already touched base on this a little bit at the beginning, but how do you feel politics has affected how COVID has been handled?
In every way. Um um Again, it was politicized right off the bat. And I don't think it not that I don't think it shouldn't have, it just shouldn't have. Because there was in Minneapolis, there was the chief. I don't know if it was a chief of police, but there was several police officers that had to that resigned because they were requiring them to get vaccinated. And I remember one of them went on Fox News, and uh, I don't like watching the news because they're so, left or right. They're both very opinionated, and the news shouldn't be opinionated. Um, the news should be the news, you know. Mm. And he went on Fox News and he was talking about how he's glad that he left the force because he didn't want to be vaccinated. He didn't want to be, and of course that's his choice. But he ended up dying, and Fox News didn't even report on that. Like, they were very happy to report that people were quitting because they didn't want to get vaccinated because it followed what they were preaching. But they didn't report when those same people passed away due to the virus. And I think it people laughed. It made me mad that people laughed because at the end of the day, that's still someone's life. Politicizing, it's easier to rule people when they're, separated, when they're when the it's easy. Yeah, it's just easier to rule people when you pin them against each other. And there was an election coming up that affected things greatly because one was I don't follow a specific political party because I think everyone has an agenda. I firmly believe that the two-party system is stupid. I think that it shouldn't have been politicized one bit, but it did, and it cost people their lives, and that made me really angry. And I'm trying not to curse. I'm sorry. That's why I keep pausing. When everyone at Fox News is vaccinated, they have to be. But when they were preaching that people shouldn't be, it made me upset because they're not being harmed by it. Everyone else is, and they're not just. It's not like when you're with a group of friends, you can talk about things that you believe to be the truth, but you can't be doing that on the news because the news reaches more than just a small group of friends. The news reaches, there's 300 million people in this country. It reaches almost everyone. So that costs people their lives, and it, it it's a sad thing to watch. You never want to see that, even if you did disagree with them politically. You never want to see someone lose their life due to something being very preventable. It's a very sad thing to watch.
Do you believe that things would have been handled better if the politics had not, I don't want to say weaponized it, but made it so political?
Even I believe that even if the news didn't do that, people themselves would have, like, not just politicians, but everyone has their own beliefs, and I will never tell anyone what to believe, what to believe, because I'll explain to them my reasoning, and they'll explain to me their reasoning, and if we completely disagree, that's fine, but it's important that we listen to each other. And as humans, we feel attacked when someone doesn't agree with us, and that shouldn't be the case. Conversation is very important, and if someone disagrees with us, I think it's important we listen. If you don't believe there's merit to their argument, then you should point it out. And if they still don't listen, then that's, I hate to say it, but that's on them. Um, um, but yeah, I don't think it would have made much of a difference if it would have made a difference if politicians didn't use it to push their beliefs, but people would have done that regardless, I believe. And it's never something you want to see. You don't want to see someone die.
Backtracking a little bit to earlier in our conversation, you had mentioned that you had a job, but you need to leave that for other duties. How else has COVID impacted your ability to work, or even your choices of work?
Um, well, the jobs I have taken was due to necessity, not really me wanting to. I don't think I I ended up getting another job at the IHOP in Kingsville. And Kingsville is the majority of the people there are very right leaning. And I remember, I'm not saying that the person that did this was right leaning. I don't know people's political beliefs just by seeing them. But there was several occasions where we were working, and the people working had to wear masks. And there was one of my coworkers just wasn't having it. He didn't want to wear one, and he ended up getting into an argument with one of the customers when the customer. I was within earshot, so I heard everything happening. She asked if he could please put one on, and she started yelling at her, at the old lady, and the manager had to get on it really fast. And uh she asked him to put on a mask again respectfully. Nothing was being done out of hate. It was done because people were worried. And I personally always wore my mask at work, even even though I hated it, because the IHOP here the AC was never working, and I doubt it works now. And I've been gone for a few months. Um, it 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 might be uncomfortable, but you have to follow the rules. Uh, and when it going back to your question, you asked if it affected the way I chose where to work. It did, but I realized that not every now I realized that most places required people to wear masks, and that made me happier. I had to deal with customers. I had to walk them to their tables. I had to wait on them. You know, when they're eating, they don't have to wear masks because how are you going to eat with your mask on? But it did make me worry about my personal safety. So I had hand sanitizer in a small bottle about this size. It had a clip. I had it clipped onto my pants. Every time I gave someone their food and handled their credit cards or their cash, or some people wanted a handshake, I would make sure I used my hand sanitizer at all times. Um, Going back to my coworker, he almost got fired because he he didn't just start arguing with the customer, he started yelling. And that's never something that you want in a professional setting. Um, it affect it affected people in more ways than just I don't want to wear a mask. It was more like I don't want you to tell me what to do. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, there was a lot of debates going on about the mask, especially going into stores and restaurants.
Yeah, and I think that's understandable. I don't know about you, but when it comes to people's personal beliefs, I never want to interfere with them. I want to explain why I believe what I believe. Um, and if it changes their mind, great. If it doesn't, then what can I do about it? I'm not gonna force my beliefs onto someone else. But yeah, it caused a huge stir with not just the restaurants had to close down. Some local stores had to close down. It affected everyone, not just people that didn't want to wear a mask. Even the people that wore masks were again, you have, like I said prior, you have to have a certain level of skepticism. You should question everything that you believe in. And if you still believe in it after you questioned it and you answered those questions, then great, but it's you have to question what's going on. You have to question your own beliefs. And I think that's something that not everyone's willing to do, because it's a hard thing to do. So I think it's important for everyone to at least try to do so.
And earlier you had mentioned that you took jobs, not because you wanted to, but for necessity.
Yes.
Did the COVID pandemic affect you financially, and not just finding a job, but in other aspects as well?
Yeah, like okay, so my stepdad actually got a raise because he wanted to go work for FEMA. He didn't actually go, but he worked so much overtime that he ended up getting so much more money. My mom is an appraiser, and what that entails is that she goes into people's houses, and she inspects them. Sometimes people are still living in those houses, so my mom lost a lot of work because of that. She didn't always have. She wanted to be safe first and foremost, but people didn't want people in their houses, and I understood that completely. But she did lose work because of it. Me myself, um, I don't know if I was directly affected, but I I took the job in IHOP because I needed to. I was taking summer classes, and driving back and forth every day takes a lot of gas. And I still needed to be able to feed myself because I'm a very prideful person. I don't like asking for help if I think I can do it on my own. And so I took the job at IHOP because I had to. Um, this one time, I my tips got stolen. I had made over $100 in tips, and that's what I was gonna use for groceries. Um, so it that wasn't because of the pandemic, but it did happen, and I did lose money. I don't know if that answers your question completely.
Well, that's fine. I just wanted to see, if it affected your ability to be financially independent, or, if that was the necessity for the jobs, was so you could have money. I believe you answered that question. With COVID-19 and the politics that have been surrounding it, there's been a lot of social movements
Yes.
that have come up about the last couple years. Um, how has all that changed your day-to-day life, or has it affected you at all?
Um, I don't think it changed the way I think, but when it comes to social issues, like what happened with George Floyd in Minnesota. I believe it was in Minnesota. Um, it was I did attend a march. Everyone was wearing masks. We we understood that it put us at greater risk of contracting it, of get coming into contact with the virus, but it it's something we thought was necessary to do. And police reform did end up happening. um you never want to see a police officer put their knee on someone's neck and have that person pass away when there was no need for it. um and it did get justice, and I think it did affect our day-to-day lives more because um it might not be a significant change, but I always say that I'm not the most passionate person about these things, but when they do happen, I acknowledge their importance. And I think that change starts from the people that go out there marching, go out there and speak their voice. You have to think local in order to make bigger changes. Um, the marches we had back home in Laredo, uh, it was about 1,000 of us. It wasn't too crazy like it was in Austin, like it was in Minnesota, like it was in California, Florida, New York. But it did cause police reform, and I think that that's important. Because what's it called? The immunity that police officers get. What happens there is if there's no president of a police officer doing that beforehand, most police officers can get away with it because uh, I saw this show. No, I saw they made a joke about it. I don't remember where I saw it, but it was like a cop can get away with killing someone as long as they're original about it. Like as long as no other cop has been convicted of doing it the same way that they did, they can get away with it. But now the immunity that they get is a lot less. And I think that's very important because it's people's lives. At the end of the day, you never want to see someone I know I keep saying it, but you never want to see someone die. It's just something you don't want to see in any situation. Um, and if things can be done to prevent that from happening, I think they should be done. So it did end up changing our day-to-day lives. Well, I don't know about day-to-day, but it did affect the way, you know, police officers have to think twice now before escalating a certain situation. And I think that that's invaluable.
Is there anything else you would like to share with me about your experiences during the pandemic that we have not already discussed?
Um, just that we need to be better about being kind to each other. Um, I know it's a very hard thing to do nowadays because everyone has their own things going on. Not everyone has the time to be thinking about the you know people have things to worry about. And I think it's important for us to be kinder to each other. We shouldn't have to get in each other's faces just to get a point across. Because if you do that, it makes you look insane, even though you might have valid points. Um, just we should learn to do things out of love for each other and not out of spite or out of being petty. I'm not a petty person. I think you know there's a there's a Kendrick Lamar there's a Kendrick Lamar lyric. Kendrick's he's on my wall. Love that guy. But he says, "Tell me your purpose is petty again, but even a small lighter can burn a bridge." Like he's saying, don't do things out of being petty or out of spite because it can ruin relationships when they really didn't need to. Um, even a small act of kindness can go a long way. And I think we should all go into conversations thinking that. And that's it. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and that will conclude our interview.
Thank you.